Hi, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us Spike Brant. Based in Lancaster in Pennsylvania, Spike is the CEO and co-founder of the design collective Nimblist, which he started with his longtime collaborator, Justin Colley. Spike began his lighting career back in 1979, primarily to avoid having to sing in a choir. Since that beginning, Spike has been a part of technical entertainment production at every level. He's been a lighting hardware tech, truss monkey, a dimmer tech, a color changer tech, a moving light tech, lighting crew chief, a lighting programmer, lighting director, a rigger, a sound tech, a monitor engineer, a laser tech, a dry ice tech, front of house sound engineer, a scenic designer, a video director, a lighting designer, production designer, technical producer, creative producer, and currently a performance environment designer. With a history and a career background like that, he truly knows what is involved to take a production from a blank piece of paper through to a satisfied client. And that client list is long. From companies, corporate companies such as the NFL, the Robin Hood Foundation, and Nike, through to concert touring acts like the Smashing Pumpkins, Cher, Bon Jovi, and Pearl Jam, Chris Brown, TV specials, which include record-breaking events for the comedian Kevin Hart, and then a bunch of one-off events, including the 12-12-12 concert for Sandy Relief and the recent Chris Cornell tribute concert, as well as permanent installations across the US. And that really is just scratching the surface of a long and distinguished career. In his own words, Spike created Nimblist out of a desire to build a premier design house where everyone is a team player and no one settles for mediocrity. Welcome, Spike.
Hello.
How are you?
We're living, learning,
Hanging in there.
hanging in there.
So we've got our 10 questions for you,
Mhm.
a crew that we're checking in with everybody. So if we go for the first one, and winding back in your career, what was your first show as a designer?
First show as a designer, I believe, was Primus. Um, and it was after doing Lollapalooza, and Derek Featherstone asked if I would take over the design role, and it was awesome. Les knew exactly what he wanted. It was this sort of soft good, like it looked sort of like a big top puppet show with all these props and soft goods, and it was super fun. It was quite an adventure.
So obviously we mentioned, just some of the many shows that you've done over a long period of time, and I'm sure that not all of them have quite gone according to plan at different times. So is there one particular kind of Spinal Tap moment that you remember?
I think on Bon Jovi, one of the greatest one was, I mean, every freaking tour was a Spinal Tap moment because we were inventing something, and we had the one of the first the V9 screen from Nocturne, right? Brand new product. They've never worked. We couldn't get the screen to work. They were like, took it apart, added resistors, still couldn't get it to work. Had to freaking have other whole nother screen brought in. It took like 2 weeks just to hash it out. I mean, it was crazy. And then on the one with all the moving, What About Now, right, where we had the hexes and all that movement,
Mhm.
that thing broke so many times. It was crazy. It was just, yeah. And then it all locks up and you can't do anything about it.
Right.
So
Just
there were Bon Jovi, always the start of the tour was some level of Spinal Tap.
great. Every single one. Over your career, what would you say is the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you?
Oh, I got this one. So I want to say, take the compliment. As someone that's always trying to improve things and make them better,
Mhm.
the show's over and you've got your list of 10 things that you wanted to improve and everyone's telling you how great it is. Let people enjoy the show in the moment, instead of being such a hypercritic about it. It doesn't mean you don't take the note or fix it, but let people enjoy the work and don't
Right.
get hung up on your vision of perfection because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Right. If everyone's enjoying it, then
Yeah, and that actually, let people have their joy, you know,
Yeah.
is sort of the thing. And you don't have to constantly just nitpick and beat on things, which is
Right.
kind of what we're living. So that took a long time to learn and sink in, but I think that's super valuable. That my daughter could learn to use that, could use that lesson.
No, that's good. And of course, it also, there's a bit of a feel good in there as well. I guess when you're thinking about the positive of the stuff that has happened as opposed to the things that weren't quite right, then it's got a positive ebb to it. So, professionally, what would you say is your proudest achievement?
Pretty fucking happy about that bird feeder.
Okay. Right.
I think, yeah, there are a lot of things. I don't know if I have a proudest achievement, like, oh, this was the one, I think I love it when I can do something that does some good and also is visually, you know what I mean? Like the storytelling you're doing really is helping to make the world a better place. So, we've been doing a lot of work with the Lancaster Conservancy, and we produced their gala this summer. It was totally sort of campy sort of thing and super cheap, but I was super proud of it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the most spectacular, and it was like compromised all over the place, and there was no budget, and yet I'm still really proud of it, which is cool. Which I think is maturity, right? Because it always had to be the best. You have to have just the right lights, and it's got to be this or that, and I think something I've learned over time is also just like look at the big picture. It's like don't get hung up, and sort of that's what the Art Fag to Pedge to Nimblist was sort of founded on, was like look at the whole thing and don't get hung up on your particular discipline, and think about the collective. The sum of the parts is great.
Right.
The sum is greater than the parts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, and that reflects obviously, like you say, in the title that you use of performance environment designer, it is very much including everything.
Mm-hmm.
When you're away from being out on shows and being on site at all, what do you normally do in your downtime?
I grew up on the West Coast, so the East Coast has been a little bit of a struggle for me to get outdoors. But I discovered, boating, kayaking here in all the little streams around Lancaster, and biking has been great here. I was a mountain biker when I lived on the West Coast. Wasn't a lot. There's a little bit more that's developed here, but the road biking is, some of the best in the world. It's like being in the south of France. And so, I get on my bike and ride 25, 30 miles down. I like the Southern County, which is a lot more hills and trees and water, versus sort of in the up north by Lidditz or out west is more flatland and farmland.
Right. You've obviously traveled a lot as you've been around. Would you say that there's a favorite venue that you've ever worked in?
The weirder the better. My favorite venue is not a venue. It's when you get to go into some city or natural environment and put a stage up and turn the place into it. You do a little bit of landscape, you're doing space planning and site creation. That's super fun and exciting.
Yeah.
I like theaters way more than arenas, and the King's Theater recently did that Beastie Boys story movie with Spike Jones, and that just such an awesome historical venue, and just redone and gorgeous, amazing local crew there. So yeah, I loved it. That was a great experience.
Right. Musically, obviously, as we've been mentioning, there's been various forms of lockdown and quarantine and everything like that. But musically, if you could only have one artist or one album that you were able to kind of keep with you, who would that be?
I would just have my Spotify. It'd be fine.
Right. What's on your playlist then?
Well, I'm a big fan of my Discover Weekly, but Sudan Archives, you know her, out of I can't remember her original name. She's out of LA. She plays violin. It's sort of this jazzy hip hop violin style. She's amazing.
Right. Now, if you could go back in time and visit the teenage Spike and offer him one piece of advice, what would that be?
Go to school.
Right. Study, listen, learn.
Yeah. I mean, it's time goes by so fast, and I wouldn't trade my life experience and for anything. I think, I never went to school. I high school dropout is my degree, and degree on the School of Life.
Mm.
My advanced degree was done in a tour bus. So, but I think nowadays more than ever, like it's super valuable to have that. It doesn't take that much of your life away. You know what I mean? It's only 4 to 6 years, depending on what you're doing. And it's of great value in the long term of also being able to pivot and do something else, and just
Right.
getting that experience, knowledge, and that sort of community, right? A lot of friends that you gain out of that. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Some of those
no
friends.
regrets, but if I had to do it over again, maybe I would have done that.
Great. Yeah. That's cool. That's good advice. Good advice for anybody listening. Yeah. Now, if you were able to have the opportunity to sit down with one person for a cup of coffee, and a conversation, either living or dead, who would that be?
That's a big bucket of people.
Yeah.
So many. I'm currently this isn't fair because it's not like it's hard to pick one, but I am currently obsessed with regenerative farming and the power and possibility of sort of transforming our planet very, very quickly, because there's millions and millions of hands touching the soil already. So it's about changing practices on something we already do. So Robert Rodale is the founder of the Rodale Institute, which they developed the original organic standard and now have developed the new regenerative organic standard, and was just an amazing pioneer and visionary and sort of the thinking about living soil and sort of the biophilic communities.
So Robert Rodale was the answer. Fantastic.
Yeah, Robert Rodale.
If people want to
Rodale Institute, check them out.
Yeah. Okay. And as simple as that, we made it to the last question already. A little bit more of a relaxed one, this one. So after the interview is done, you're going to get a phone call from Team USA. And the Tokyo Olympics are going to be on in 2021. Hopefully, fingers crossed for that. So Team USA are going to call you up for compete for America. Now, it could be for the summer games or it could be for the winter games as well. But the question is, what sport are they going to call you up for? What have you always fancied having to go at?
Just to be clear, this does not necessarily reflect my aptitude in the sports. But for the Summer Olympics, I think they've just added rock climbing, so I do that as my former self. And in the winter, I'd snowboard.
Right. Okay. There we go. Great choices. Great choices.
I do them all both non-competitively.
But you're standing up, so you haven't broken any bones or anything, so you can't be that bad. Yeah. Right. Look at that. One complete spike. Spike, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much for finding some time for us. It's really appreciated.
No worries. No worries. It was a hoot.
It was obviously great chatting with you. I look forward to obviously the chance to meet up in person as and when that opportunity comes up again.
Happen. Yeah. I think we'll be able to take our mask off probably in December next year.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so before then. No. Have a wonderful start to the new year. And thanks again. Take care, Spike.
Cheers. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.